Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. So glad you guys could join us today. For our audience tuning in on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, we're glad you all could be with us. We're going to connect with our friends over on Instagram as well, so they can be a part of the conversation. And finally, we're going to connect with our friends over on Amazon Live. We have a great guest that's joining us for the first time today with a book that I think you guys are going to really enjoy and give you something to reflect on. We're now live on Amazon Live with Cyrus Webb Presents with your host, Cyrus Webb. If you guys are new to us on the Amazon platform, make sure you guys hit that follow button. You see it either here in this corner or down below. You also will see the book by my next guest. We're so excited to welcome award-winning journalist and author Jeanne Cartensen to our broadcast. Her book is called A Greek Tragedy. We're going to talk to her not only about the research for the book, but also what it was like for her to take us back to almost a decade out from the tragedy and what she wants us as readers to take away from it. For you guys on Amazon, you'll notice the hardcover is on sale right now, as well as the Kindle edition is on sale. Hello to you, Lisa. Thank you so much for being with us over on Amazon, and thank you so much for the follow. Jeanne, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Hi, Cyrus. This is great.
Look, the pleasure is definitely all mine to be able to have you on with us. I was just saying to you before we went live, I really enjoyed the book. There's so many layers of it. I want to begin our conversation there, Jeanne, because I should mention for our audience that are just finding out about you, just finding out about the book, this is not only just a time in history you take us back to, it's a time that you know very well because you were able to cover it as a journalist. So what has it been like for you now, a decade out, Jeanne, to have the book A Great Tragedy out and to be able to share this with the world?
It's an amazing feeling, and I wish it weren't as relevant as it still
Mm,
is, but it's still very relevant.
right.
And, I was there as a journalist in 2015 when the shipwreck happened, and it was so intense being there. You think that reporters were all so hardcore, and we are in a certain way, but
Mm,
things like, when you see refugees on the move and families it kind of vulnerable, it really, really stuck with me. So now, 10 years later, I am so happy to be able to share this story, not only for the people in the book, the people on the boat, and the people who tried to help them, but today, this kind of thing keeps happening. And
yeah.
so I feel like we might be able to connect to these people now more.
That's such a great point. And you and I were talking in our conversation before this conversation, Gene, that I had a lot of emotion reading. I honestly, when I have to be honest with you, when the book was first pitched to me, I didn't remember this. I didn't remember this at all.
Yeah.
But when I was reading it and thinking, for one, this was not that long ago. Um, but the impact of it, not only of course on those who were involved, but also the community. I think that says so much so about the time that we live in now, Gene, because as I was saying to you, sadly, we become so numb, I think, to a lot of things that that we hear about. Well, this accident happened here, this happened here, this shipwreck, this plane crash, and we hear these things and don't think about the people involved. What does it feel like for you now? And I'm curious what you've been hearing about the gift you're giving us of telling us about the people, not just the incident.
Yeah, people really have been moved by the book. I've had so many incredible emails and responses, and I think um, it's a very intimate story in a way. I don't know if you felt it that way, but it's
Yeah,
it's intimate.
yeah,
You feel like you're getting on the boat with this young Afghan man, and you're getting on the boat with this young Syrian artist, and you feel their hopes, and then you feel their fear, as you see that the smugglers had lied about this ship and it's going to go down. And so I feel that it does help bridge a gap. Just on Monday, there was a smaller shipwreck here in California, in Southern California. It
mm,
was an open wooden boat trying to get from Mexico right into, the San Diego area, and it went down, and at least a couple people drowned. And again, who are these people? Why did
yeah,
they get on the boat?
right,
And you will really learn this in my story. One guy was a banker.
mm,
One guy was a psychologist, an artist, a young child. She was only 13, but her dad was in danger in Afghanistan. And so It's not as far away. That's the one thing I learned doing the book. You see it on television, or
Right.
even you write your story and it seems so far away,
Yeah.
but it's not that far away. These people have similar lives to ours, recognizable lives, and you start to realize, wow, I might have been put in that position. I might have made some
Mhm.
similar choices.
Pointless. Yeah, I definitely felt that. I want to say hello to you guys coming in over on YouTube, over on Instagram. Hello to you, RHJ. Glad you could join us. I think it's Run John. Hello to you, or John Run. Hello to you. Naya Presents. Hello to you. Glad you could join us over there on IG too. And you just brought up another great point for our audience here, Jeanne, and that is okay. So you were able to write about this in 2015 and cover it as a journalist. Was it difficult for you to let it go? Is that what kind of was the seed for you when it came to writing the book, or how did you go from covering it as a story to then being able to really immerse yourself in it in writing this book?
That's such a good question. Sometimes I think I'm kind of crazy, but it was about 4 years later that I found myself, I kept thinking about the shipwreck, and
Mhm.
I was so close to it. I was in the village where they were
Yeah,
bringing the survivors. I saw the looks in their faces, but I knew nothing about the backstory. And also, I had reported a lot on the Greek island of Lesbos, and I knew what some of the locals had gone through, but I didn't know to this depth. So I found myself really wanting to go back. And the other thing is what you keep bringing up, the numbers.
yeah,
Our eyes blur over, so
yeah,
and so, this number of people drowned in a
yeah.
shipwreck. This number of people were deported. This number of people are refugees today. And for me, even the numbers would blur over. So in this book, I wanted to leave the numbers in the background in a certain way and just go deep into a human story
Hmm.
that happened on October 28th, 2015, but is happening all the time. And in fact, has happened for a
Right,
long time because the human species were always on the move.
right. You mentioned something earlier, and I definitely felt this, Gene, and I think the readers of the book will too, and that is a connection. I was saying to Gene before we went live, my regular audience knows this, I don't have children of my own, but there are parts of the book that I couldn't help but think about my nephew and what I would try to do for him, and to make sure he was able to have the opportunities, that I felt like he deserved and that I wanted for him. Is that something you're hearing a lot of, Gene, that people are looking at these individuals now that you've humanized them? That's really what you've done, and said, "Oh my goodness, I would have done the same thing, or I could see myself doing that."
Yes, I have heard stories like that. I mean, there's this one young Afghan man in the book. He's 24, and I'm sure you remember this part that he gets on the boat with his pregnant wife and his two young sons,
Mm,
and you learn that all he wanted, he didn't want to get rich. All he wanted was to get his family to safety, work really hard, and build a new life. And instead, you see him holding his child in his arms in the water. He himself doesn't have a life jacket. And I think, who cannot relate to this?
yeah,
That whether it was your own child or your niece or nephew or whatever, he wanted to save his son's life and he did not have the capacity to do that.
mm,
And I think for me, the interviews that I did in the book, I got quite close to him because he went through a lot of trauma. And I think he thought about it a long time before he decided to talk to me. But once he did, he opened his heart. And so
mm,
I hope the reader will feel as close to him as I did by the time I was done with this
yeah.
process.
I know they will. Camilla Flanagan, hello to you over there on IG. Glad you could join us. For you guys tuning in over on Amazon as well, we appreciate you guys. For those who are just joining us, welcome. You're watching Cyrus Webb Presents. We're on Amazon Live, but we're simulcasting on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, and on Instagram. We have Jeanne Cartensen joining us today. She's an award-winning journalist, but the author of this book you guys see here, A Greek Tragedy. I'm going to highlight it for you guys over on the Amazon side. You guys can get the Kindle edition right now for only $14.99. It's 48% off or you can be able to get the hardcover now. It's on sale right now as well for $22. It's 24% off. You guys can get it right here on Amazon. We're also going to let you guys know how to stay connected with Jeanne as well. So, Jeanne, to the point you just made about the interviews, I mean, we hear so much right now about there's some that's why I said there's so many layers to this book, because you as a journalist, you have seen the way that unfortunately times have changed, where people are not as trusting even of the media as they used to be. And so to be able to have that trust, what was that like for you? The word that keeps coming up for me is a gift, because to me, anytime someone can trust you with their story, those intimate thoughts and feelings, that's a gift they're sharing with you. What was it like for you to receive that gift from those you interviewed?
Hmm. Well, it was hard sometimes. Sometimes, Hidayat, the Afghan man, I went to, he was in Turkey years later. It's a long story, but he survives, but not all of his family survives. So I fly to Turkey to interview him, and I felt his pain so much. So
Yeah.
it was hard to receive. And I think it is a gift. It's a gift to all of us, really. I
Mhm.
mean, it is my work as a journalist and an author. And so I do my part, right? My part is writing a good book and trying to faithfully convey their story. But I think that these people do this also for their own reasons, and they are giving a gift to all of us,
Mhm.
because in a lot of ways it's easier to stay in silence.
Yeah.
Um, you know, this book, I hope, means a lot to the people I write about, but it won't change their lives.
Mhm.
Hopefully, it will change other people's lives
Yeah.
as we go forward, and hopefully have a better consciousness and awareness of migrants and refugees and people on the move,
Yeah.
um, that we really have to ask ourselves, really. And today in the US also, we need to ask ourselves, why are we dehumanizing these people?
Yeah.
It's there's not a lot of truth to that, honestly.
Yeah.
It serves some people, but there is a terrible, terrible cost. And yes.
I want to talk about what that point you just made. Dr. Velma Hello is joining us there from California. She says, "Good afternoon. Wow, how devastating." Joining us on Facebook, Dr. Velma, glad to be able to see you. So I want to talk about the hope, because that's one of the things you and I did discuss. Because I know a lot of what we've been talking about, Jeanne, and for our audience has been about, for one, the loss and the tragedy. But there is, as there seems to always be, there always will be people who will do the right thing and will try to help and try to be there. Even in your sharing their stories, Jeanne, you're continuing that work. Talk to us about what that was like for you to have the opportunity to share the stories of those who were there to help, not only in 2015, but have been part of their lives since then.
Well, as journalists and in the media, there is this tendency to only go for the disaster. That's what people click on, that's what draws our attention, and it is important. But because I worked on this book for a long time, I found myself listening for other kinds of stories. And I heard stories of people that you could call heroes who never got into the news, and what they did never made it out. And, I don't know if you remember the one woman, the wife of the coroner, and she was in the hospital the night that the hypothermic children were coming.
Oh
And
yeah.
she was asked to hold this one little boy who they thought was going to die. And she looked at this kid and said, "I'm sorry, but I feel like this kid could be my son." And she just holds him skin to skin. And she ended up holding him for days, days. She would not leave him. And this child survived. And there are other stories like that, in the port. The children were rescued first, and some of the kids were not going to make it or were rushed to the hospital, but there were also a lot of kids around the port that didn't know where their parents were. And so one woman I interviewed, a restaurant owner, she asked a grandmother she knew, a Greek woman from the village, "Would you please hold this girl?" And she held the girl all night, and the girl was crying, where are her parents? The
Mm.
parents thought, "Oh my goodness, maybe my daughter, she's probably drowned." They were devastated. But in the morning, they found eventually their daughter. And in this age, not this age, but certain politics where there's separation of parents and children in the process here, that is a really devastating thing to do. And I think my book, in a very human way, kind of gives insight into that. It's something we all know, but we
Yeah.
kind of push it aside sometimes.
Yeah, and the way you I'm so glad you phrased it that way, Gene, because I think again that's what I was trying to find a way to articulate earlier about the way that you've taken it from just being numbers and an incident to actually people. I think it's very difficult when you actually get to know names, know people to be as detached. I think it's a lot safer for people who don't want to be close to something to just keep it blurry, right? But when you're able to be able to have examples like what you give us here, it's hard not to think that could be what would I want someone to do for me. Was it was I'm going to ask this question. It may seem odd, but I feel like the audience will appreciate this. Your answer to this was this a project that you regretted at any point writing or
Hmm,
taking on?
what an interesting question. I think sometimes it took me so long, and parts of it were painful. And sometimes I
Mhm.
worried that, is this really, is all of this effort, 6 international reporting trips
Mhm.
to do all these interviews, is it really going to come together in a way that will make a difference? And so I did have some dark moments. Sometimes it was hard for me. Sometimes I didn't know if it was going to be good enough. But now that it is done, I'm really happy that it's out in the world. It doesn't have to be the biggest seller. These stories have impact person by person, and I am just getting an incredible response to it. So I am now happy, but that's an insightful question. I had my moments when I doubted.
Well, I'll tell you the reason why I wondered because I think for a lot of people, and I've seen this even in my own life that sometimes there's a phrase that has come up in my career, Gene, that is there such a thing as too much truth? And I say that relative to the fact that a lot of times when things are necessary, but they are difficult. And especially someone like yourself, who is a journalist, who is, seen as being objective, and then to be able to bring so much humanity to something like this. As as a human being, it's hard to, like I told you in the beginning before we went live, parts of it were difficult for me to read. So definitely was curious if it was difficult for you to be able to write and to take all that in. Dr. Velma says, thanks for sharing. I was curious about your mental, having seen and heard these stories. And yeah, so I think I figured the audience would appreciate that thought, and I appreciate you sharing that. I should mention, though, the book is doing quite well on Amazon. It's still in the top 100 of bestsellers here on Amazon. So I'm so glad that they're finding the story. What is your hope, though, Gene? I've told you some of my reflections, and we've talked a little bit about what others have said. As the writer, as the person who devoted so much of your time to this, what is your hope a Greek tragedy does for us as readers?
I hope that I think we can all see that our immigration policy is broken. We can see how it's not serving people at all. And I just hope that my book will generate conversations that come from a more connected human point of view, that it's not just red versus blue or pro-migrant or anti-migrant, that it draws people together to talk about solutions and just to remember our basic humanity. I know that always sounds vague, but I think it's really important, even in the times that we live in. Today, people are, even though we're living through a time perhaps where the policies around immigration are pretty cruel, but there are still people here that are doing all kinds of things to help people. And I think we need to surface those stories because, none of us know whether we might be in the situation where we might have to flee our homes, or we might be one of those people like in a border zone or something that we have to decide whether to help or not to help. So having a conversation around that is my dream for the book.
Well, I definitely believe those conversations are happening, and we hope they continue. Again, everyone, Jeanne Cartensen has been our guest. A Great Tragedy is the book. I should mention the subtitle, Jeanne. One Day, a Deadly Shipwreck and the Human Cost of the Refugee Crisis. And it definitely helps to not only to humanize the tragedy that took place in October 2015, but also the individuals that were involved that were there to assist as well. Jeanne, I really appreciate you stopping by. How can our audience stay connected with you?
Please visit my website. It's www.jeannecarstensen.com. So I won't spell out that whole name for you, but jeannecarstensen.com. You can Google me and Google the name of the book, and you'll get to my website, and I have, a lot of resources there.
Love it. Congratulations again, Jeanne. Thank you again for stopping by. Looking forward to chatting with you in the future.
Me too, Cyrus. Thank you.
More than welcome. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Cyrus Webb Presents. Until next time, you all make it a great one. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.